Hi and welcome to this week's Wu Wei Wisdom Life Lessons teaching. It's great to be back with you all. This week we are talking all about how to stop intrusive thoughts and overthinking. Okay, David, so let's start with some definitions. In your experience working with clients, how would you define intrusive thoughts and overthinking?
Okay, I see them as slightly different coming from the same seed, Alex. So intrusive thoughts is when you have a recurring set of thoughts that kind of overpower you and kind of muddy the water. So you know where you want to go, the direction of your journey, but then you keep on having these other thoughts that come in and spiral, and I'll explain more what those thoughts are. And the overthinking, to me, is procrastination. That's where you can't make a decision. That's where you're just going round and round and looking at all the alternatives, and you get yourself lost in the maze of confusion, I call it. The maze of confusion, where you don't know where you're going to, you don't know where you're coming from, and you just are at a loss.
And so you mentioned the idea that they both come from the same seed or the same origin. So how do they dovetail together then?
Accountability.
What do you mean by that?
So you're not being accountable and taking responsibility. It normally sparks off that the thoughts are clouded, as I said, muddy the water by emotions. So this comes back to what I try and say in every teaching. It's so important. You are the creator of your emotions. You are not the victim. So it's not saying you shouldn't have emotions or emotions are bad or wrong, but other people or other things or situations or stimuli do not transport through the air and enter your body and create an emotion. You create an emotion. So when you have a thought, you have to be accountable for that thought, and don't use the feel word. Oh, I feel like this and I'm not sure that, or I can't do it because of fear, or I can't do it because of anxiety, because that clouds up this, and then they go in two different directions, not being able to make a decision or constantly changing and moving and not being sure.
So what we're talking about here is accountability for our thoughts.
Yes.
So the intrusive thoughts or the circular, non-conclusive overthinking thoughts, and also being accountable for the red light emotions, the uncomfortable or painful, sticky emotions that these types of thoughts create. Because if we then become obsessed by the emotions or distracted by the emotions or use the emotions to not take action, to blame as an excuse basically for not taking action, or just not being authentic, then we're not being accountable.
I'd agree with all of those, Alex.
Okay.
Yes, there's everything you say. So if we take the first one, intrusive thoughts. So you say, I really want to get this job done. I really need to do this. I really need to do that. And then the intrusive thought comes, yes, but what if? The negative. Well, let's look at the worst case scenario. Let's look if it goes wrong. Let's look if it's not going to work. So, of course, you have to consider that, but it becomes intrusive when you become frozen, when the worst case scenario kind of gets you frozen and you don't move forward at all. So you know where you want to go to, but it's almost like, here's what a client said to me. It's like I'm walking on thin ice and I'm not sure whether the next step is going to give way. So I've got to check. I've got to keep checking. I've got to keep checking. So in actual fact, I never do anything. I know where I want to go. And then here comes emotions. I then get frustrated with myself. I then get angry with myself. I then get annoyed with myself. Now you're on the carousel. And this is what intrusive thoughts will do. The negative takes over. What will people think? How will people judge me? Will they criticize me? So I can't do it. And let's make sure I get myself ready for all those negativity.
And the shame of this, David, is that we can be incredibly capable, talented, creative people and very capable of achieving and succeeding. But it's almost like these little drops of, it's like the devil on our shoulder, some of that little negative voice saying to us, this is all going to go wrong, or that kind of imposter syndrome voice, or that little negative voice of self-doubt that we talk about on so many of our teachings, that can undermine all the good stuff, all the preparedness, all the knowledge, all the experience that we have. And it's such a huge form, an overt form of self-sabotage, more than I would say even the overthinking, because the overthinking is more like subtle and circular and going round, whereas the intrusiveness is like, bang, here's a really negative thought that's going to really knock you off balance.
Well, I think we start to identify the subtle but real difference is the intrusive thoughts is you're absolutely clear and know what you should be doing, but you're not doing it. So where the overthinking is, you're not clear on what you should be doing. So when you're clear on what you should be doing, the project you should be doing, who you should be speaking to, how you should be acting, why you should be living your life. But then, as you said, the devil on your shoulder, which we would call the inner child, comes in and gives you all the what ifs. What if? What if it doesn't work? What if it goes wrong? What if somebody criticizes you? What if they don't like it? What if they don't agree with you? And so that's the intrusive thought. And then over time, it's like you've set your sat-nav, but all these, when it's on the sat-nav, it tells you about a roadblock and then you don't go. It's like the intrusive thoughts send you all the roadblocks and then you don't follow your path and then you get stuck.
I mean, we've done so many teachings on negative thinking and how to deal with it, and I can put links in the show notes to those teachings. But one of the things I particularly wanted to explore in this episode is the importance of self-compassion when dealing with intrusive thoughts or overthinking, because a lack of self-compassion, of kind of beating ourselves up emotionally or in our self-talk even more for having the intrusive thoughts or having the tendency to overthink, my goodness, does that make things even worse for us.
And so you're absolutely right. And for those of you who are not used to the work of the inner child, remember when we're talking about the inner child, we're talking about the subconscious part of your mind, or you may call it your ego. And what you just described, Alice, is how it works. So it gives you all the what ifs, all the negative scenarios. And then when you get stuck and you don't do what you know you should be doing on the intrusive, then it blames you for not doing it. And so that's what I call the carousel of despair. And then you get stuck in that carousel where you know what you should be doing. You're clear. You can see yourself doing it. But the weight of the what ifs stopping you doing it. So it's almost like, again, I'm just describing what a client has said to me. It's like somebody's got a pair of reins and they're holding you back. Yeah. You know where you want to go, but the reins are holding you back. And this is so typical of the inner child work, because you're set up at this duality inside of you where your spiritual self, your true self, your inner voice, your authentic self, whatever you want to call it, I would call it Shen, knows what you should be doing, but the inner child has put the brakes on. And you're so used to surrendering, powerful word, surrendering to the inner child, that you then, the inner child, blames you for not doing what you should be doing. There's the paradox.
Yeah. So when we catch ourselves, because, if you're listening to this teaching, chances are you've listened to several more of our teachings and other teachings in this kind of sphere. So you're emotionally aware person, you're interested in self-improvement. So chances are, when you can catch yourself almost in this process of self-sabotage, whether we're talking about the overthinking or the intrusive thoughts. But it's this accountability and this self-compassion which become so vitally important when we find ourselves at this fork in the road of awareness. I know what's going on here. I'm allowing intrusive negative thoughts to seep in and start to sway my thinking and judgment. Or I know what's going on here. I'm allowing perfectionism and procrastination to seep in and putting me on the carousel of despair. Once we have that awareness and we catch ourselves, then we're at the fork in the road. We have a clear choice, and it's 100% our choice, isn't it?
It's not clear, though.
Is it not?
It's not clear.
Why is it not clear?
We know we're at the fork, but it's not clear for several reasons. Let me give you a few of them. First of all, the inner child's voice is extremely loud and overpowering, and the inner child's voice is directly connected to the emotions.
So what is the inner child saying to us then at that point?
All the things you said.
It's going to be a disaster.
It's going to be a disaster. It won't work out. That people won't like it. If you say that they're going to criticize you, they're going to judge you, you're going to fail. How about that one? You're going to fail. It's not going to work. And then you're going to look a fool. This is the voice of the inner child. And why it's not clear, that fork you quite rightly talked about, is the inner child is so strong. And then what's more important, the inner child voice is connected to your emotions. And so the inner child will activate your emotions. Let me give you the number one. Fear. I'm scared. I'm fearful. Fearful of what? Fearful in case it doesn't work, what people will think, what people will do. So it's not clear, because to be clear on that fork, you've got to have a really strong understanding of your innate, inherent worth and value. You've got to be aware of your Shen, your spirituality. And this is what's different about the Wu Wei Wisdom model that you're looking at with us here today. Alex has just told you about the fork, and the fork is exactly right. Do you go down the same fork? Here's another reason, just familiarity. You're so used to going down that fork. So you're at the fork, and are you aware of the other fork? That you have innate worth and value. No one can take it away from you. It's innate. No one can give you more. The idea of receiving validation, to me, is a nonsense. How can someone give you something you already have in abundance? You are already valuable. And that's why the fork isn't as clear as Alex said. And that's why this teaching is to make the fork clear.
So in order to have clarity at that point when the inner child may naturally kind of scream and shout and kick up a fuss through our emotions, what you're saying is we need to have already pre-built solid foundations for ourselves in terms of our understanding of our value and worth, because then we can do a quick stress test at that point and refer back to our solid foundations. But if the foundations are weak, wobbly, confused, based on what other people think of us rather than what we value about ourselves, then there is going to be a lack of clarity. There's going to be confusion, and the inner child is more likely to win out. So when it plays us with the negative self-talk, that little negative voice, we're way more likely to be swayed by it at that junction.
That's right, because I'm saying that there is a junction. You're absolutely right. But we don't realize we're at the junction. We just follow the same path without even questioning. And that's why, again, for those of you used to our model, the golden thread process is so powerful, because it starts to highlight that junction that Alex spoke about. That junction is pivotal, because you can choose to go the other way. You can choose to be accountable, self-responsible. You can choose to value yourself. You can choose to think what other people think of me is none of my business. Really, what is my business is what I think of me. Now you see, when you go down that road, the Shen road, I call it, the spiritual road, now the fog goes away. Now your path becomes clearer. Now you can get back onto the trail that you know is right for you, for your career, for your love life, for your family. How many times in your life have you ever said to yourself, after the event, I knew that was wrong. I knew I shouldn't have done that, because you didn't recognize this fork. And this fork is how we make our choices, and we have to be accountable for that fork. We are not the victim, because the thing that clears and fogs up this and muddies the water is our emotions. Oh, I'm fearful, I'm scared, I'm overwhelmed, I can't cope, I'm not good enough, it's too much for me. This is the thing that clogs up that judgment of the overthinking, stuck in procrastination, scared to make a decision because, as one of my clients says, I've forgotten how to make decisions. I'm so busy trying to please other people. I don't know what I really want. I've lost any value about my importance. Is this you? Are you important? Is your life important? And this is why this is so important.
So really, it's not just about having an awareness when this chitter-chatter, rumination, overthinking starts to happen. It's about doing the prior work.
Yes.
So yes, be accountable when the chitter-chatter is going on, but we'd be way more accountable before we even get to that stage. So we're talking about doing all the work that we talk about on all of our teachings, about work on our self-belief, work on our self-doubt, work on our value, work on not seeking validation or love only from other people, looking within, all that essential deeper work. Because what you said, David, is if we don't do that, it's so much harder to turn around the overthinking, to turn around the intrusive thoughts. It's more of a kind of internal battle, as you described a little bit earlier, that tug of war.
And that's why the accountability part of it, Alex, is so important. And that's why I try and say on every teaching, this simple teaching to me is life-changing. I'll say that again, this is life-changing. You are the creator of your emotions, not the victim. That's being accountable. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't create emotions. Before you jump and write to me and say, oh, you're saying No, I'm not saying. I'm saying emotions are wonderful. I'm saying emotions make us human. The emotion of love. What more do you want than that? Joy, confidence, happiness. These are emotions that you create. Other people don't put those emotions into your body. That's being accountable. Here's the second one. That you have innate worth and value. It's not in doubt. It's not up for debate. It's not relying on somebody else. Somebody else doesn't come along and say, hey, I've got some worth and value. Here, have some of mine. It's not something that's traded. It's not a commodity. It's innate. It's inherent. For you as a spiritual being, you have worth and value. Be accountable for that. And if you was just accountable for those two simple things, then the fork that you're talking about, Alex, becomes crystal clear. There's no fog or mudding the water. It doesn't matter that the inner child has got his finger on the fear button. You recognize it. Oh, so why am I creating fear here? Oh, so why am I creating anxiety? What's the voice of the inner child saying? I'll tell you what it's saying. 3 lies. You're not good enough. You won't cope. You're unlovable or you're unworthy. 3 lies. These are not true. Be accountable for that. They're not true. Why would you base your life on lies?
Exactly, David. And I think really this teaching is very much like a Wu Wei Wisdom teaching, because as always, we're saying to really fix the problem, you've got to deep dive on your accountability. Yes, you can do all the mindfulness techniques, the stopic techniques, the higher techniques which may deal temporarily with things in the moment in terms of negative self-talk or red light emotions. But if you really want to crack this problem, it's about doing the deep dive on the self-accountability work. And that really, to my mind, is the biggest act of self-compassion that you can do, biggest act of self-love that you can do for yourself, is to do this deep accountability work.
And really what I try my best to do is to clear the confusion. I try and talk to you straight that if you are experiencing intrusive thoughts, or if you are procrastinating or overthinking, the inner child is in control. Your inner child is in control. You are not acting from an authentic spiritual basis where you trust yourself, you value yourself, you're clear, and you know that you will make mistakes like every other human being, and that's how we learn. And that's the difference. That's what clears up all these nuances that we try and talk to. We try and cover. People write into us and say, oh, do a teaching on this and do a teaching on that. And somebody wrote into us and said, do a teaching on overthinking, procrastination, intrusive thoughts. But you see, when you take all that kind of fog away from it, we're talking about the simple thing. Are you a spiritual being? Are you living an authentic life? Do you believe in yourself? Do you ever hear that little doubt coming on? This is the inner child. That's the work that you have to do, the reparenting, and you have to get that right. And then this idea of overthinking, of procrastination, of intrusive thoughts is a memory. It doesn't happen because you're following your true path. You're in your flow, what I would call Wu Wei flow.
Wonderful. Thank you, David. And if you're interested more on this idea of living a more spiritual, authentic life, please do tune in next week because that's going to be our teaching topic. I will also put links in the show notes to other long-form teachings we've done on negative thinking and managing self-doubt and valuing yourself. There's a whole host of extra teachings there to help you with this topic. I really do hope you have enjoyed this teaching. Please do let us know and perhaps share it with someone else who you think it may also benefit. David works every week with clients all over the world on exactly these sorts of issues. And if you'd like to learn more about David's one-to-one consultations via Zoom video call, please also check out the link in the show notes. And finally, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We produce new teachings every Saturday, as well as 2 small midweek snippets of video wisdom for you. So do subscribe. It's really important to us. We look forward to sharing with you again very soon. Bye-bye.